Climate change, the effects on our oceans. When the subject about the biggest threat to our oceans is discussed, what comes to mind? Oil spills, perhaps overfishing. While these issues do impact the health of our oceans, the biggest threat is actually something that affects the entire world, and that's climate change. Although this threat may not seem to be of serious concern, climate change negatively impacts every being in the ocean and on land, and will have lasting damages for generations to come. Recent findings show how the changes in our climate over time have had negative effects on ecosystems and well-being of our oceans. Let's begin with how recent findings show the adverse changes that we see in the ocean's environment today. According to the U.S. Global Research Program and NASA's website, oceans occupy over 70% of the Earth's surface area, which plays a major role in regulating Earth's climate system. Excess heat from increasing CO2 levels trapped in our atmosphere are ultimately absorbed by our oceans, causing temperatures and sea levels to rise. Additionally, the excessive amount of CO2 being absorbed not only affects our temperature and sea levels, but it also affects the ocean's acidification. Well, what is ocean acidification? The NOAA refers to ocean acidification as the reduction of pH of the oceans over an extended period of time, caused primarily by the uptake of CO2 in our atmosphere. When CO2 is being absorbed by the oceans, several chemical reactions occur, resulting in more hydrogen ions and less carbon ions. Carbon ions are a very important building block to such things as seashells and coral skeletons. Decreases in carbon ions can make building and maintaining shells and other calcium structures very difficult for certain organisms, such as oysters, sea urchins, corals, and plankton. Now that we have a better understanding of some of the current changes that we're seeing in our environment today, let's continue with how these recent findings compare to historical data. According to the U.S. Global Research Program's website, changes in sea surface temperature reflect the overall warming trend over the years in the climate system. The following bar graph shows the number of degrees by which the average sea surface temperature for each year differs from the average sea surface temperature during the last century. During the past 30 years, sea surface temperatures have exceeded the last century's average every year. From 1986 to 2016, the temperature difference from the average went from negative 0.11 to 1.018. This reflects a 1.03 degree average just in the last 30 years. As the ocean temperatures have continued to rise, so have the sea levels. According to an article from the National Oceanic Atmospheric Association on September 11, 2017, since 1993, the sea level has been rising at a rate of roughly 3.4 millimeters per year. In 2016, the global sea level was 3.2 inches above the 1993 average. That is roughly twice the speed of the preceding 80 years. All of these changes have affected our oceans in a plethora of ways. For example, when our ocean's surface temperature increases, it can cause havoc on many ecosystems. Seabird and marine mammals face very high risks from increasing temperatures, including high levels of death, loss of breeding ground, and mass migrations as they search for more favorable environmental conditions. An article from the UN News Center on June 5, 2017, according to Deputy Secretary General Amina J. Mohammed, globally the sea level has risen by 20 centimeters since the start of the 20th century, due mostly to thermal expansion of the oceans and the melting of glaciers and ice caps. Thermal expansion happens when the ocean water heats up, it expands, and then ultimately occupies more space. Even a slight rise in the ocean's water level can result in a loss of habitat for animals and humans. Higher and warmer water melt polar ice sheets, which in turn endanger such species as polar bears, walruses, and penguins. Additionally, as seawater reaches further inland, hundreds of millions of people that live on coastlines are at risk of flooding. So not only are oceans dealing with record-breaking temperatures and sea levels, but an often overlooked fact is that our oceans have absorbed over 90% of the heat trapped in our atmosphere, thus changing its chemistry. According to the United Nations new Secretary General report, ocean acidification is one of the largest threats to marine organisms and ecosystems. Ocean acidification affects calcifying organisms such as corals because their ability to build skeletal material depends on the acidity of the water. Coral reefs in particular are very sensitive to ocean acidification, with over 60% of our corals currently threatened. Although tropical coral reefs cover only about 1% of the ocean, they are among the most biodiverse systems on the planet, supporting over 1/4 of the entire marine species. In conclusion, climate change has negatively impacted not only our oceans, but the animals that depend on it. The excessive amount of CO2 in our atmosphere is causing rapid deterioration of our oceans. The scientific consensus is clear. Over 97% of climate scientists agree. Climate change is a result of global warming, largely caused by humans burning fossil fuels, which in turn is increasing the amount of CO2 in our oceans. Thank you.
Can we clap?
Very good. Go clap.